Hello everybody, this is the sequence lifecycle kubeadm office hours. Today is the 11th of March 2020. Please add your names to the list of participants and your agenda topics. I'm going to share the agenda document in chat. Apparently we have this bot, there is a note taker. I didn't quite understand why this is happening. I think the bot is automatically transcripting our audio to text. But where it goes, I have no idea. Maybe I should ask SIG country Bex about this. Let me share my screen. All right. So I think we have new participants. Yeah. Martin, your name is peculiar.
Why that?
It shows a random string of characters.
Oh, that's interesting. I can see it well, actually.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't see
pretty
anything.
unknown.
I think you can rename yourself in Zoom. Brian, do you want to introduce yourself to the call?
Sure. Hello, I'm Brian Borum. I work for Weaveworks.
Thanks. Okay, this is the PSA section. I don't have anything in particular. Does anybody have any PSAs, announcements for this group? Okay, so any topics you want to discuss? I don't have anything in particular, so I have only issue triage that I want us to do later. Martin, I saw some discussions that you are having with someone related to Medium.
Yes, I mean, if there's nothing else to talk about, we could probably chat about it a little bit. That was basically some ideas about including some aspects of virtual IP handling and load balancing for the AP server into kubeadm setup. I think that was excluded at earlier stages, but could have got interesting again now.
I see. I remember now, you had a discussion with Fabrizio in the kubeadm channel, and it was about this topic of bundling a load balancer with kubeadm.
Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
I see.
I mean, I started off with the usual suspects, which are keep alive D for the virtual IP and Nginx for load balancing. But there was somebody who has developed some component which is actually meant for use in Kubernetes, that is kubevip, which does both of them and can be run as static pods, which actually would make setting up a HA cluster using kubeadm rather simple. I've played around with it and it looks very good. I think he wanted actually to join himself, but doesn't seem to have made it.
Yeah, and I don't see Fabrizio on the call as well. So my immediate question is going to be like, this is going to work for virtual IPs, but what happens if like a separate control plane node is in a completely different network? How can we load balance that?
Good question.
Yes. So normally, if we have big proposals, not only for kubeadm, but Kubernetes in general, we nowadays employ the so-called KEP process. And the KEP process is a Kubernetes enhancement proposal. I guess I can link you to that. Just a second. Enhancements. KEPs. Maybe we have docs in here. Okay. So I'm going to share this in chat. So basically, we have a template. So the idea is to create a file that follows the template and provides detailed explanation of what you want to add to a certain part of the project. Whether kubeadm, Kubernetes API server. The idea of the detailed, the idea of the extra detail here is so that we can catch any potential issues with the idea. For instance, I immediately ask, like, what do we do with external networks? And the KEP process is exactly for this purpose. We want to define all the catches, like all the potential problems, everything about the issue. Even, I even like some diagrams in there to, for load balancing in particular, it's going to be very nice to have as much detail as possible. So this is, it's optional for you, but if you want to propose a feature, like nowadays we use this process.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a look into that. I mean, as you mentioned, external networks. I mean, as kubeadm already supports HA clusters, i.e., well, consisting of more than one control plane node. So in a way, I think it would be covered by that. But there could be potentially other issues. I agree.
Yeah. Basically, in this particular location, Kubernetes enhancements KEPs, we have a folder for sequence lifecycle that on kubeadm. And inside here, we have the kubeadm folder. So basically, when you create a proposal, you have to create a PR. The PR template is going to be filled for you. Sorry, it's not going to be filled for you, but you basically, inside the PR, you have to create a file that is going to reside in this folder. But before that, what we do, because we usually have a lot of discussion around proposals anyway, what we do is we create a Google Doc. So if you create a Google Doc, we can go, everybody can rally there and we can start discussing on the Google Doc your ideas. If the idea is leaning towards implementable, if the idea is leaning towards becoming a good idea, we can move it to this official process of a KEP.
Okay, so the Google Doc, I could actually create it on my own account and share it with some people who I want to collaborate with me, correct?
Yes, I think, have you joined the Sequence Lifecycle Google group mailing list?
Yes, I have.
You can just send it with that email address and everybody's going to receive the message, and
okay.
they will have edit access as well.
Okay, great.
So because I also am not really a networking expert, and I think you should outline your ideas first, and then we can have some more people look at it. But I mean, for now, this is my proposal.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Yes. Okay. Fine.
Okay. Thanks. So I should add this in here. Does anybody else have agenda topics? Okay. I don't see any other topics. I guess we should move to issue triage. So I see Fabrizio joined, I think. Yeah, Fabrizio, Martin, you had a discussion with Martin about bundling load balancers with kubeadm. So I propose that he writes a Google Doc where we can like look at the ideas first.
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Martin, for being back on this topic. So my understanding is that it's not a bundling, but it is something that we can let me say investigate, because it will if we can have this option to offer to which is a self-hosted load balancer. This will make easier for people starting with kubeadm playing with HA, because they don't have an external dependency. And so this will be an option that we can offer and support, even if this option let me say, should not replace all the options that we already have. So bring your own load balancer and all the so everything is already in place now. But if we can support, it is interesting and offer let me say an easy path for the user approaching HA.
Okay, any other topics on this? Any other comments on this topic?
Yeah, Brian here. I just want to mention, I think this should intersect with the add-ons work that Lee Capelli has been pushing forward. I imagine it intersects in a very complicated way, but in some sense we should think about trying to use those mechanisms for not hard coding. You know, hard coding an Nginx setup inside kubeadm is exactly the kind of thing we were trying to get away from with the generic add-ons work.
Yeah, this makes sense, even if let me say add-ons are something that apply on an existing cluster. This is something that is required to spin up a cluster, so it happens even before the cluster exists. So probably let me say the mechanics are different, but yeah, I agree on the concept.
Okay, yeah, we could have potentially a long debate about the ordering. I would imagine you'd bring up one node and then bring up the HA and then bring up subsequent nodes, but we don't need to have the whole argument right now.
Yeah, so that's has the potential to actually become a little bit weirdly looking scheme if we actually employ full-blown CRDs and alarm operators here.
Yes, I think what I would find most charming in this respect is a lightweight solution like this kubeVIP that was proposed on the Slack channel yesterday, and actually works quite fine. Might not be what everybody wants to use on productive environments, but anyway would help setting up a HA cluster incredibly. And since it is very simple to configure, we could probably embrace this somehow. And apart from that, of course, everybody should be free to set up his own HI environment. Virtual IP handling and load balancing, as we have been doing before. So I don't see any contradiction in that. But we have to see how deep we have to integrate changes in order to get this configuration thing done. The rest, I mean, the integration of the static ports is something that we already have for the etcd. It's the same mechanism, basically. So the manifest is there before we call kubeadm init, and it just pulls up the services. Once the virtual IP and the load balancer are up, they can be used, and it works already.
Yeah, we have to be able to distinguish if this is going to be an add-on or a core component of the kubeadm deployment. etcd is currently considered core. This is maybe something that, like Martin, if you want to outline this particular part in the doc, you can say, like, what is your personal opinion on the topic? Ideally, I think this should be an add-on. something that the add-ons, maybe Brian is going to be interested in this, something that we are looking at from the add-on installer that is currently not supported is air-gapped environments. There's no way for us to pull the images that we need from the basically the add-ons that the user wants to install. That's a problem. So this potential load balancer here should also be able to pipe, like export all the images in some machine readable way, maybe, so that we can tell the user, hey, these are the images that you will have to pre-pull.
Yeah, so more generally, I think each time we have something that could be an add-on, we can kind of test the add-on's idea against it, and that might tell us ways in which we under-specified add-ons. So that's one. You know, air gap is a very generic issue, has no direct linkage with HA, but it's a good idea to kind of test each of these new things against it, see how well it fits.
I have a question. How is HA working as of now? I mean, what's the process, and how are the components interact with each other, nodes? Is there any kind of load balancing, and how does it look? Because, sorry, I'm just trying to see a context here.
I can try to answer. So today, basically, we have a process for spinning up HA cluster with kubeadm that has a requirement, which is bring your own load balancer. And then you can spin up a cluster using kubeadm init and kubeadm join -- control plane, which basically create a second node with all the static pods for the control plane component, but the two nodes share the same control plane address, which is load balanced. Okay, so the process work, and I saw from the information that I have, I saw also a good adoption from the community. But basically, bring your own load balancer is something that makes difficult for the user, especially for the newbies, to test it. And so if they want to test HA today, they can use kind, whatever, but those are, let me say, products that gives you a cluster out of the box, and you cannot understand internals, how it works.
Should that not be abstract layer? I mean, load balancer is just a load balancer, and you can actually put anything and the endpoint you want there, right? Isn't that abstraction already?
Yeah, today the abstraction is really simple. Give me a stable address, a stable IP address, and that then should load balance. So the abstraction is really simple. Is what we are discussing, from my understanding, is to provide the user a mechanics, so a process to get a working cluster done.
So I see. Okay, so someone wants to spin up a cluster with specific load balancer, like, I don't know, something from AWS.
The case is someone wants to bring up a cluster with 3 masters.
Okay.
So right now, all the client side can only take 1 IP address. So state of the art with kubeadm is to point it at one of the 3 masters.
I see. Okay.
So hence
multi-master cluster setup. Okay. I see.
That's what we mean by HA.
And something that we have been trying to explain to users is that they should use DNS names for the load balance endpoints, because they use a static IP, and they at some point want to change the static IP and things break. Kubernetes is not really tolerant to changing the address of the master, unfortunately. All right, anybody else have comments on this?
Maybe some kind of auto-scaling group could be used for that purpose that is bundled with that load balancer. I don't know.
I mean, this is something that it becomes a discussion with core, maybe at this point.
Well, to me, that's next level up, right? kubeadm is supposed to be the component for installing. Actually, the whole load balancer thing could conceivably be a cluster API discussion.
Yeah, like a high level from kubeadm even. It's the problem users are having nowadays. They don't know what load balancer to pick, and we really don't have a good recommendation for them. I think HA proxy is becoming pretty good at this point. But then again, Fabrizio, do even what we were using in kind HA proxy, I think.
I think HA proxy, but basically, kubeadm is as Brian was saying, the task of kubeadm is to bootstrap the cluster, so it should be agnostic to the infrastructure, and so it should not take care of the auto scaling, and it should not take care also of the HA solution. But this does not prevent us to, let me say, to give an easy path to the user for development purposes or whatever. So the principle of kubeadm is being simple, being taking care of the bootstrap, and being agnostic to infrastructure, CNI, CSI, and CRI. And so given this principle, which we of course we are not forcing, everything that can make the user life simpler is well accepted.
Yeah, the same way we did for copy of certificates. It was really a nice to have for the user. The copy of certificates across control plane nodes. Okay, I guess Martin, if you want to write this doc, ping the sequence lifecycle channel, we can have a look and
Sure, I'll write something down, yes. I think that will probably make you guys easier to understand what is actually motivation behind this. But this is not really in any way a critical thing. It just popped up under the discussion, and I think it's probably worthwhile just discussing it and seeing whether it is feasible.
I can see autoscaler in a role here, to be honest, although you guys are probably right, this is something that is probably cluster API.
Yeah, all right, thanks. Any other topics? Okay, I guess we can move to issue triage. We first look at the PRs. Let me see where we reached last time. We have a few interesting PRs that I want us to discuss. So last time was 8.11. Okay. We discussed the colonies migration issue. Rosti, I think you're pretty much LGTM on this one.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for Rajan to squash the commits, and he probably did so. Did he?
Yeah, I squashed the comment.
Okay, I'm going forward with LGTM it.
By the way, I participated in a very late session the other day where I pretty much observed how the cluster API is implementing the same logic. And I already spoke with Rajan about this. I think the cluster API should not be doing this. It's something that we should move to the operator, and hopefully we can have it one day. And we can also move this logic that is currently in kubeadm to the operator. So both cluster API and the operator can, cluster API, and kubeadm can consume the operator instead of importing the migration library.
Yeah, actually, as a comment in the PR, which originally introduced this library, I pointed both Chris and Rajan to this effort. And back then, I think that the core DNS operator was really in its early stages of development. So I think that if they actually go and help there, then probably the core DNS operator is going to become ready with much faster temps.
Yeah, I'm actually in the process of getting the coordinates operator ready as soon as possible, so that it can be implemented like in kubeadm or cluster API or any other places it's required.
Yeah.
Super.
Thanks a lot for working on this. I think it's the right thing to do for us because so originally I requested from the cluster API that they should just execute the kubeadm binary with a certain phase and they can get the latest update of the core file. That is the crucial part here. But apparently there's a problem in cluster API that they didn't want to execute the kubeadm binary in a container. So they decided to use the library from source code. But that's a separate discussion. So Rusty, if you have GTM this, I think we are good to go. But we are in code freeze. So I guess the question from me here is: do we? So it wasn't a critical issue, correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding too.
That was a corner case, if I remember properly, with the default name of the file and deployment being edited, and that default file name being put there.
Okay. So it has to merge after code freeze. I believe it's the end of the month, pretty much. Right. Thanks. This is a very interesting PR by Rafa. He hasn't been joining the meetings recently. This came out of nowhere during code freeze date. Rossi, did you see my latest comments? So, basically, I'm not going to explain the whole business here, but what we are doing is kubeadm now hard codes a certain tag for etcd, but the tag has a -0 because the GCR bucket image now has revisions, always by default. And we have some logic in our upgrade in code in kubeadm to compare a version that is fetched from the running etcd cluster to the version that is hard-coded in the binary. And this sort of fails, creates a warning because you're comparing a version that has metadata to a version that doesn't have metadata. So this is part of the problem. The other problem here is that basically Rafa wants to be able to feed a -- config to upgrade at SUSE, feed a -- config and upgrade. And they basically want to modify to my understanding, Rossi, please correct me, they want to modify the etcd image during upgrade.
Yes.
So we basically want to allow them for now to do this because like allow all users to do this because we still support the -- config during upgrade. But in the long run, we should try thinking about something else here, like different solutions for upgrade.
Yeah, I think that even if we actually switch the interface from --config to something else, the core problem actually persists. And the core problem here is that we are actually treating the etcd image tag as an simple semver, and this is not always true. In particular, the image tag is may actually hold in, and in most cases it actually holds in the semver of etcd, but it's also going to hold in version information for the image itself, which is the dash number which the GCR repository has. And of course, this may not always be dash number. It may also be a further descriptor of what the etcd version is inside. So for example, it may be 3.4.3-alpha.3 or something like this, in which case it's an extension of the etcd version. So the case is a little bit complex here, and we need to probably think in those terms rather than just try to interpret the image tag as a semantic version. So I think that what we should do is, instead of trying to hard code the image tag into the cluster configuration, well, not hard coded, but rather like hardwire it upon upgrade, we should probably try to make things a little bit better with regards to what our tag expectations for the etcd image are. And we should allow for some room of additional specification there. So you can basically do a tag that says, for example, 3.4.3 dash rusty or something like this.
Yeah, I think this is a problem that applies not only to etcd, but basically to all the images. So the possibility to append a suffix to the image version. And so I think that it will be interesting to manage this suffix. The problem, however, is that how do you manage upgrades and change to the suffix? Because as soon as the user start, let me say, deviating from the version number, which is managed by kubeadm, it is not clear how you can manage upgrades. And this is tricky. So I would like to see the problem, let me say, spec'd out, and probably I have to sync with Rafa with this as a whole, because I'm pretty sure this is not only a problem of etcd. And I would like to see a consistent solution, and probably this will be something that impacts the API as well.
Yeah, it's also a problem with core DNS. Any add-on in the future as well. I just wanted to say that the GCR images, which we hard code in the kubeadm binary for etcd, are going to use this particular schema. It's always a dash revision. So for us to support revision upgrades, as I tested here, if we, basically I have a proposal here. I'm not sure, Rossi, if you saw this, but I think if we write the etcd image, if we compare the etcd image from the cluster configuration to the etcd image in the latest kubeadm binary, and both of them contain revisions such as -0, -1, we can safely perform the upgrade between revisions. Currently, kubeadm does not support that, and I think we should support at least the case where we have basically, we track these revisions from GCR. Like for the other case, however, where the image can be completely, with a completely custom metadata, I think we should probably just not upgrade etcd.
Yeah, I haven't taken a look at that PR today, so I haven't seen your comments there, but I get your point, and what I'm thinking right now is to just create a simple wrapper around the version parse semantic function, and probably the type that's returned there that simply adds a so to say a image revision component to the version.
Okay, but what happens if somebody is doing something like, -1 is the revision and they do I don't know, Microsoft? We have to separate the company name from the revision.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking is that we should probably treat this as say always the latest version. That's basically one side of the coin, and the other is to just allow for some sort of minus force flag to force us to do so. Otherwise, we can just print an error message and bail out.
I mean, I personally am fine as long as we support this case, which is if we see some sort of a critical bug in etcd that is not bound to the etcd version, maybe something is bogus in the image itself, and we do an image revision. I want us in kubeadm to be able to upgrade. Like the rest of the cases, I think are kind of less important for me at the moment, personally.
Yeah, I think that those are pretty important cases, and since the community actually supports these image revisions, then we should probably do so too. And basically, my plan is to just wrap around the utils version package.
Yeah. Well, how are you going to deliver this in a separate PR, proof of concept maybe?
Well, I can try in some sort of a proof of concept PR, but yeah, I'm a little bit busy these days with some internal work. I was going to do that today, but I didn't find the time, so probably next week. We'll see.
All right. Should I log any issues for that in the kubeadm tracker? I think we should log maybe one issue with the 2 cases that we want to support, like custom metadata and revisions.
Yeah, given the fact that the PR does not point to an issue, or at least it was the case, then we should probably create such an issue and probably point the PR to it.
Okay, I'm going to do this right after the meeting.
Thank you.
All right. The next PR is this one. Bartosz sent it also pretty much last minute before code freeze. So this is, I think he is redesigning this logic in kubeadm so that he can prepare for the machine readable output for a kubeadm upgrade plan, I think.
Yeah, that's some action work on an issue that I created some time ago. And basically, I haven't actually yet looked at the PR since I don't have pretty much any time these days. But yeah, the idea there is to lay down some work to enable easier machine readable output for the print available upgrades function.
Yeah, so this is just cleanup / reorganization of the code.
Yeah.
We should look at it after code freeze. It fixes this redesign. Okay, I understand. All right, this is a small fix. We saw that the pre-flight checks on Windows are hiding some errors. Nothing critical here, just exposing the underlying error. Okay, how much time do we have? 17 minutes. Triage. So I already moved all the tickets from 118 to the next milestone. Let me see what we have in 118. Housekeeping tasks. We have tracking issue for Windows. The survey has shifted for the next cycle after the discussion yesterday in the Costa Lifecycle meeting. We decided to not ship the survey for KubeCon because of the delay in the conference itself. Housekeeping tasks. I think I pretty much did everything myself, by the way, Fabrizio. Nobody wanted to contribute here. But anyway. Yeah, so the upgrade docs, I think they merged yesterday. Sorry, they haven't merged yet. All right.
This is unfortunate. This is a easy task for newcomers, so we have to make a better effort to make them visible.
Yeah, I've noticed that if I add help wanted, normally people respond immediately, but for this particular housekeeping task ticket, like people don't, there's no interest for it. Maybe because the topic itself is not very interesting, like recurring, update tasks.
Yeah, probably we should keeping this as a tracking issue and then open a new issue for each ticket and with detailed instruction and also good for first user.
Yeah, but then becomes hard for us because I'm very happy with this single ticket now. If we have 5 different tickets, it's a bit messy.
Yeah, it is a trade-off, but
yeah.
I think that every effort for getting people on board is well done. So
Maybe I can also, periodically during each cycle, I can ping folks on our Slack channels, and maybe people are going to see this better.
yeah, maybe let's think offline and try to get someone to help us in this task.
Okay. So housekeeping, tracking issue for kubeadm. We are currently merging the docs, and end-to-end, me and Ben are working on the end-to-end test at this point. We are pretty much done for the beta support. So kubeadm Windows going beta this cycle. All right. So now the question is what to look at the issue tracker. Maybe we should start looking at some of the 119 tickets. So this is this chronologically? Okay. So this one is still blocked by SIG-ALF. It's not going to see any work in the 118 cycle. I'm trying to search for topics for this group. Fabrizio, this one is basically requested by Tim. He told me, like, hey, can you log this issue? I had a discussion with him. Basically, Tim said that maybe instead of customize, we can investigate the YAML templating language, which is not YouTube. So I had a look at it, and it's interesting, but I didn't exactly understand all the operators at this point. Does anybody have experience with this?
I have not direct experience, but there is also a similar issue in cluster API for the cluster API templating. And I take a look at this language. I'm not sure that the same apply to kubeadm. For many reasons, but probably the idea is that we have to, something which is actionable is to look at our customized process and check if we can make these template agnostic.
Question is, do people use Helm charts with Lucene syntax perhaps to install kubeadm?
No, there is no Helm chart for installing kubeadm because kubeadm create the cluster, and you use Helm for installing things on an existing cluster. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so going back, I think that the idea from the main concern of team is that in the community there is not so clear consensus around customize, and so probably we instead of jumping in customize as we did before, probably we have to be open and become agnostic to this. So I think that it is worth to look at the idea of being template agnostic more than looking at one specific template engine. And then, okay, of course, we can use YTT as an example of another template engine.
It's going to be tricky to delegate the templating process in such a way that is going to be completely template engine agnostic.
Yeah, you are right. It is not easy. In my opinion, it requires a design to investigate alternatives.
Sorry, how about leveraging just placeholders in YAML? I mean, this is something that leverages that, right?
Sorry, I missed the last part.
This is something that leverages placeholders in YAMLs, right? This is what it looks like to me.
This engine in particular, I don't think it uses placeholders. It's slightly more complicated.
So maybe it's serialized to JSON and then to something else. Yeah.
So this template. I think that the main difference is that customize leverage on overlays, and so you can apply transformation on existing YAML, while YTT use a different approach, but the approach is not so simple. So with YTT, you can use, let me say, template like a Go template. So with placeholder, placement, etc., you can have loops, if conditional. So it is a full language templating engine, but it also supports overlays. So it is, let me say, something in the middle between customize and Go templating, and it is also YAML aware, so it knows the syntax of the YAML. So it has some strengths. For instance, with the big difference with Helm is that YTT fully understand the YAML syntax, so you don't have to worry about spacing, indentation, whatever, because it fully understands the syntax. But yeah, to be honest, I'm not fans of any templating engine. That they all have pro and cons. So I would like to divide the discussion in two layers. One is okay, what is the best template engine, and in this field everyone can have his own opinion. The second one is what kind of integration we have in kubeadm for template engine, and this is the one that I most care about. So. Probably it is interesting to go back, look at what are the kubeadm needs in terms of from a template engine, and see then if the template engine out there address these specific goals or not.
Yeah, we definitely need to investigate some of these engines. My immediate argument with Tim was why, because we already support patches for init and join because we have phases. So we already delegated the potential patching process to the user. We only don't support them for mutable upgrades because we don't have phases for upgrades. But Tim said that, hey, if the V1 pod spec that we have in kubeadm changes, this is going to break the patches of the users. I said, okay, but if we include templates for a static pod, like, first of all, what are we going to template? I have no idea because the pod spec has so many fields. Like, what should we expose? It's a tricky discussion.
Yeah.
I personally think that we should just delegate to patches and say, hey, you just have to make sure that your patches apply on each release.
Yeah, I would like to is to bring back the discussion to what we want to achieve with the templating engine before choosing the templating engine.
Yeah. Okay. This topic, how much time? 5 minutes. Anything interesting? We deprecated this flag. Question, Fabrizio, do you remember if our kubeadm alpha kubeconfig user command supports API for signing the client certificates?
As far as I remember, no.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it doesn't. Maybe only reads from this.
As far as I remember, all the certificates are generated starting from the CA that you have on the disk.
Yeah. Okay. Machine readable output, we're making some progress. Thanks to Bartosz. So early next cycle, I suggest we look again at the accumulation of items for potential V1 beta 3. I know that it's difficult for downstream consumers to track changes in the API, but I already saw a number of items. So, you know, back in the day, the list was only 3 items, but nowadays we have slightly more changes.
Yeah, the discussion always boils down to provide a good upgrade path.
We have migrate. We can convert user YAML.
Yeah, which was kind of what we want to sell to workgroup component standard.
Related to the patching aspect, you know, I have been talking about this for a while, but if we modify the config, this is just throwing an idea out there. If we include the patch as a field inside the config for a static pod, basically the user don't have to have managed files on disk.
This is entering in a tricky field because if you go to this way, you are doing two things. So you are promoting the customized things that from the other side Teams is putting kind of in discussion. Second, you are also opening the gate to some problem because the customized patch can be different for nodes. So how you shape out your config, how you store your, so it is interesting. It was also in the proposal, the idea of to store the patches somewhere instead of having in files. But I don't have big feedbacks from the users, so I really don't know which direction to take in this. I probably would like to hold on this. Instead, if we want to open an interesting discussion is around the operator. So, and especially around how to manage the change to the cluster. Because basically we have now our config does not represent the entire state of the kubeadm cluster. And this is a blocker for implementing the operator. And so I have collected some idea, but I need time to write it down. But if you want to open a discussion, I'm open to brainstorm around this.
Yeah, not storing the state is really problematic for. But it then becomes a question like, should the kubeadm config map care about the individual nodes? It's it's a complicated topic. Same goes for the kubelet. Same goes for the kubelet, individual kubelet config.
Yeah, but the problem is up to which level you are responsible for the life cycle of those things. If you are responsible for doing upgrades or for change the configuration, then you have to know how they are configured, or you need some sort of capability to check the correct configuration.
Yeah.
So I see that like where you're going, Fabrizio, we can actually think on something like keeping the cluster configuration mostly the same, but then we can also have an instance-specific configuration, which is basically something that's probably stored in a local YAML file on each node, and it's probably containing stuff like that's missing right now. So for example, what is the state of the certificates on the local node and stuff like that.
Yeah, we have to think about this.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for the discussions. Today we have to end the meeting. It's time for the cluster API. Thanks everybody. See you next week. Bye.